Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. If you are watching out on the YouTube and the WNSTV channel, you'll see that I'm wearing an aquamarine shirt. It's Strategic Factory. They're our sponsor. I am not rooting for the Miami Dolphins this week. People in Miami aren't even wearing Miami Dolphins colors. This guy's been my friend for about a decade and a half. He's been doing sports radio down in the Miami area, as well as production, and being an all-around great guy, and has a wife who's an incredible battler like my wife, now has children. It's a wonderful thing to have my man Zach Krantz back on the program. You can find him out at WQAM, as well as at Zach Krantz. That's ZACHKRANTZ in Miami. I don't think there's going to be any traffic getting to the game on Sunday, dude. I mean, I may just call an audible and lay on the beach on Sunday morning before I head over.
It might be, well, it'd be better for the Miami people to go lay on the beach. If you're a Baltimore fan, I think you're going to want to be at the game because it might be one of the best games you see all year long from your team. The Dolphins are depleted. The Dolphins are not just rebuilding. They're not just retooling. The way I look at it now, it's their expansion team. They're very close to being an expansion team with a couple good players. And there are a couple good players on the team. When I mean a couple, I mean Xavier Howard, one of the best defensive backs in the league. He got paid in the offseason. Jerome Baker on defense is an up-and-coming guy. First-round pick Christian Wilkins, pretty good player. Then it kind of is, all right, well, what else is on this team? Oh, you have Laramie Tunsil. No, he just got traded. Okay. He was your best left tackle. Kenny Stills is a pretty good wide receiver. No, he was in a Laramie Tunsil trade. The way I look at this team, and even when my wife asked me, who doesn't know much about the Dolphins or sports, goes, how's the Dolphins going to be this year? I said, wait till this time next year. That's what I kind of.
Well, I'm an Oriole fan. You watch the Marlins, so you know about next year. And it's not that next year never comes. That's for the Washington Redskins. We've witnessed that for 20 years. But flying into this, I mean, man, what a weird week. What a weird month, right? Whether it's the Storm and the Rolling Stones last week, which I wanted to sneak down there for that, but I'm coming in this weekend, and I was trying to figure it all out. Everybody running for cover down there and what's going on along your coastline and this crazy storm in Dorian. But the sell-off of the Dolphins happening, I guess the Raiders did it to some degree last year. We're used to it in baseball. I go back to the Marlins great fire sale of the 90s, the first time around, right? But in the NFL, it's a little weird to be flying into this and in the best interest of the game and where they are and tanking for two and all of that. But the Dolphins haven't had much to crow about. I've never had you on my program ever in the modern era where you're like, oh, man, we got our answer. We're 12 wins in. I mean, the Dolphins fans have never had that in the modern era. So I don't know the difference between, well, we might win 7 or 8 this year versus we're going to win 2 or 3. I got a lot of friends that are Dolphins fans. Sort of the reboot thing is kind of why this rich, guy that's lining up with Trump would remodel his stadium and try to bring people down there. What they had wasn't good enough 2 weeks ago either, right?
No, it wasn't. Even with Laramie Tunsil still on this team and Kiko Alonso still on this team and Kenny Stills still on this team and anyone else that might have been cut or traded in the last week or two, they were still a 7-9, 6-10, possibly 8-8 team. They were still middle of the pack, picking 14th or 15th in the draft, grabbing a guy that hopefully is going to be good, like this year with Christian Wilkins. He was a 13th overall pick, good player, not a game changer. Listen, this is a trivia question I use when I go out to all my appearances. The Dolphins have drafted, in their existence of a franchise, 3 quarterbacks in the first round: Bob Greasy, Dan Marino, and Ryan Tannehill. That's it. They've never, since Marino left, which is now almost 20 years ago, Ryan Tannehill has been the only guy they've drafted in the first round. They haven't even tried at that position, which is scary because, as you know as a Baltimore fan, as any NFL fan knows, if you don't have a franchise quarterback, we're basically past, to a point, the days of the Baltimore team early in 2000, the Tampa Bay team, or the Jim McMahon-led Bears, where if you have the super-duper unbelievable defense and just kind of a game manager as quarterback, you're going to win a Super Bowl or come close to it. You really need to have, in this day and age, a quarterback that could kind of control the game and be the guy on your team. This year, Ryan Fitzpatrick and Josh Rosen. So I'm not looking forward this year from this team. But if their whole goal is to get one of those top 2 or 3 guys, quarterback-wise in the draft, they're on the verge of getting there by the next draft, by next year's draft. because this team is really bad. But until you get that position kind of solidified, which they waited so long down here on Ryan Tannehill, 7 years from the day he took over till the day of his last game down here.
7 years. Was it 7 years?
Yes, 7 years he was drafted.
How is that possible? Didn't feel like 7 years. It really didn't.
Nestor, it's not possible for one reason, because it never happened. You don't see any other teams around the NFL draft a guy or even pick up a guy in free agency and say, listen, after a couple years, we'll see what we have. And then a couple years later go, well, a couple more years and he'll be the guy. Well, let's try him for 2 more years and see, because we have a new quarterback. Now, I guess in Ryan's defense, which is almost making me vomit in my mouth talking about, he had a couple different coaches, a couple different offensive coordinators. But if you watch the NFL and you know the NFL, if you're a good quarterback, it doesn't matter what scheme you're in, who's your coach, who's your OC, who's your quarterback coach. You're going to be a good quarterback, and we've seen it before. When guys are like that, even if the scheme has to change, like in Baltimore for a guy who runs the ball, like you just know when you're going to have a good quarterback. 7 years we sat down here. 7 years I went to training camp, and every start of training camp was, this is the year Ryan's going to break out. This is the year Ryan's going to break out. I'm so happy he's not here anymore for the chance, just for the sake that I don't have to say that. Now, I'm not saying that for Ryan Fitzpatrick or Josh Rosen. I'm hoping Josh Rosen is lightning in a bottle.
By the way, how many coaches for Tannehill? How many OCs? 3 coaches, 4 OCs, literally?
Yeah, I believe it was 3 head coaches and 4 or 5 offensive coordinators.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I think of the operation down there, and I want to get to Lamar Jackson. It's a little bit of a homecoming for him. Zach Krantz is our guest, WQAM. You can find him at WQAM.com, as well as at Zach Krantz, where he has a wonderful picture of the ball coach, an aging ball coach, up on his Twitter at this point. And they've had Storm coverage and Stones coverage and football coverage of a team that stinks. Dude, Stephen Ross, like, I'm telling you right now, if Bisciotti or Angelos were holding fundraisers for Donald J. Trump around here, that wouldn't go well. I know the knee didn't go well around here either. But, he's sneaking around on airplanes with John Harbaugh's brother a couple of years ago.
Right.
I think you may have a lousy owner there. I mean, I'm thinking Cleveland. I'm thinking Washington. I've seen what lousy ownership has brought a death to my hometown from the baseball side, right, summer after summer. To quote a Springsteen song here, Zach, I think Stephen Ross is at this point, I'm on red alert as him being a, if not a sleazy owner, at least one who's an incompetent football owner, a very rich guy, but I don't see any signs of life as him being a good football owner.
Well, I'll tell you where you might be right and you might be wrong. When it comes to where you might be wrong is since he's been here, has done everything he can money-wise to get guys that he thinks are going to play and be good for this team. Where you're right, he's had totally terrible people that have been his voices. The only guy that's been a good voice to him is not really a football operations guy. It's Tom Garfinkel. But when it comes to Mike Tannenbaums of the world and the guys he's had around him that have really been the voices in his ear about how do we make this team better, or we need to go do this. Well, when someone goes to him and says, Ndamukong Suh is going to be a game changer for us, but it's going to cost us $28 million a year. It's going to cost us $100 million. When Ellerbe came from Baltimore, and he was supposed to be the next Ray Lewis down here. When Mike Wallace came from Pittsburgh, and he was supposed to be the next Antonio Wallace before Antonio Brown, but he was going to be the next great wide receiver. Stephen Ross didn't hesitate to cut a check. His biggest problem down here, football-wise, has been the people around him whispering in his ear about what to do. When it comes to the actual franchise in general, he's done everything he could to get the stadium so we could be a Super Bowl every other year, every 3 years, every 4 years in the rotation.
Yeah, how's the stadium look, by the way? I haven't been down yet. I know there's going to be plenty of seats available on Sunday, and I'm coming down for the Super Bowl. So, let your friends know that Stone Crabs are in season, and I'll be glad to take all the leftovers in January off Radio Row.
You'll be there at Joe's, don't worry, which will probably be closer, I'm thinking, this year, because I know that every time we were down here for a Super Bowl, it's either in Broward County or Dade County.
No, it's down in Miami Beach this time. I mean,
this year it's in Dade County, so we're back to probably the South Beach Convention Center, which is not too far away from Joe Stone Crabs, which is great for you. Listen, Stephen Ross is really a 50-50 owner in my head. 50-50 when it comes to he has the wrong people around him, but he does whatever he thinks is going to help this team, even if they're the wrong decisions. At the time, when Ndamukong Suh signed down here, I was kind of happy because it was Ndamukong Suh until I saw the fact that he was going to make $25 million a year, and you kind of know what you're getting from him. He's a hired assassin. This is the guy that you hire in a movie that, is going to go fight Liam Neeson, in the Czech Republic.
In the final scene, right, exactly.
Right,
yeah.
This is it. This is when, Thunderlips comes out in Rocky, and you hire Thunderlips for a ton of money for that one scene. That's what Ndamukong Suh is. Mike Wallace, shiny object in the corner. Ellerby, shiny object in the corner. Philip Wheeler, shiny object in the corner. These are all guys since Stephen Ross has been down here that they've signed. And they've signed the big money deals, and they didn't work out. They lasted a year, not even sometimes. Sue lasted a couple because of the dead money. But you want to talk about dead money? I think the Dolphins are first or second in dead money going into the season, and we're talking about an entire salary cap of dead money.
By the way, former Ravens players have fleeced every organization in the modern Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Suggs era, because every Bart Scott. I go back to Kim Herring. I go back to Jamie Sharper. 20 years ago, Ellerby's just the guy that you bought, I think, right?
No, that's it. Yeah, that's the bad taste in my mouth from that, because just got out of a Super Bowl. Ellerby and Ray Lewis. Ellerby was supposed to be the next Ray Lewis. That's all we were talking about down here.
Wow. You should have talked to me. I would have.
I wish that Stephen Ross did talk to you instead of Mike Tannenbaum or wherever else Jeff Ireland was in his ear, because he would have gotten some football knowledge and not just some shiny object in the corner. That's been his biggest problem. I don't think he's a bad owner.
Well, that's a huge problem. If you're attracted by the shiny object, isn't that Daniel Snyder's real? Other than being an a-hole, isn't that his problem? That is the problem of poor ownership, is poor judgment, and jumping around on planes with Jim Harbaugh led me to believe, what planet are you on? And then running around with Donald Trump and trying to shirt in South Florida, I would think that's probably not going to go over well. It doesn't go over well with me, and I'm not a Dolphins fan.
No, and it didn't go over well with one of the Dolphins players. Think about that. Kenny Stills came out that afternoon when we found out about it and ripped his owner. Now, that was not said to be a part of the trade when he was just put in the trade with
Blah, 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 blah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure, and I was not in the meetings when this happened. I can only take from what I see in the trade that it had nothing to do with it, blah, blah, blah. But I don't necessarily believe that either. I don't think Stephen Ross went to Chris Greer and said, get rid of Kenny Stills, but I also don't think that he was so maybe we shouldn't give him away if Houston really wants him in the trade, because what they got from Houston, they got... We gave up our best left tackle, our second best player on the team, in Laramie Tunsil. Now, if you're rebuilding, you really want pieces like that. Laramie Tunsil was under contract for the next 2 years, even with getting franchise tag at 2 years and $12 million.
By the way, the Tunsil thing's incredible, right? That video comes out, changes everything about the course of your franchise, our franchise. We wind up with Ronnie, passed on Tunsil, literally, right? And everybody said he was the best player in the draft, and now he's been dealt again, which makes him feel like, 10-day-old eggs, quite frankly. Same thing with Sue, that if somebody's willing to move on, around here, we weren't willing to move on from Ray Lewis or Ed Reed or Terrell Suggs or anybody else who could actually play that they wanted to keep around. It makes me feel like Tunsil's wasn't the best citizen when he got there, but what do I know,
Well, you know what? The one thing you hear now, and of course after a trade you hear little things here and there, is that maybe he just wasn't the guy that was every day the jump-up guy in practice and the push guys around and this and that. He was just kind of did his job and left. And if that was the case and he was still one of the top guys on the team, then I'm upset with getting rid of him, because the four positions in football, anyone who knows football knows the four positions in football that are the biggest positions, the highest paid positions, and the most important in your team are quarterback, left tackle, edge rusher, and shutdown corner. We have a shutdown corner in Xavier Howard. We paid him in the offseason, even though now I can imagine if a team offered a first or two firsts, we'd get rid of him in a second. But that's just how I look at everything. And no one on this team is safe right now if there's a first or second round pick being dangled. But you don't have a quarterback. You're gonna draft one next year. You had a left tackle. You just got rid of him. So now you need a left tackle. I don't even know right now. We are how many days before the opener? I don't even know who's playing left tackle for this team, and we're 4 or 5 days away, whatever it is, from the opener for the Dolphins and the Ravens. I have no idea who's playing that position. Edge rusher, there's no pure edge rusher on this team right now. The Jadeveon Clowney would have been that guy, and he's not here now. And I said cornerback, he got Xavier, but quarterback, he got nothing. So when you get rid of one of those four staple guys, you really better have a plan in place. And I think the only plan is, well, we have now 2 firsts, 2 seconds next year. We have 12 or 13 picks overall next year. We have $100 million plus, and now more because of the Kiko trade when it comes to the free agency next year. Here's the deal. That sounds great right now for a fan and for a media member who looks at it and says, okay, next offseason, you got $100 million to spend to get good players in here, and you got 14 draft picks. Great. Now, let's go back the last 20 years of this team and this franchise, and you tell me in the last 19 years how many really good first and second, third round picks you've had on this team that have lasted past the rookie contract. There's less than a handful. Like, there's less than a handful of guys. You just got rid in the offseason of your right tackle that now is going to start for Denver that Von Miller is drooling about in Juwan James. You got rid of Mike Pouncey, who was your first-round pick years ago, who you didn't think could play anymore. He just signed an extension in San Diego for another year. Like, the way they've been doing things is so bad that you almost have to look at what they're doing, this purge of roster and money and everything, and say, this might be the only way to fix the team, which is so sad for an NFL franchise.
Zach Krantz has sadly been covering most of the lousy sports in South Florida, WQAM, for a long time. I mean, at least you have the heat, right? But, I mean, I know where I am, dude. I'm getting on a plane and coming down to Miami. I expect to win. We play Arizona next week. I expect to be 2-0. We're going to have to get.
Right.
I'm going to have like a real season here. And this is so much more significant by the fact that the Orioles are not providing anything like that. And I know the heartbeat's different. I mean, in South Florida, when the Dolphins are tanking, you've got the beach. And when the Marlins move down, into a place you don't want to go to, you have the beach. And you have the beach. And you have good weather.
Right.
And you have pretty girls. And you have the beach. Around here, the football team, I don't think the Ravens could do what the Dolphins are doing, right? Even at the worst time, and the Redskins have never said they're retooling. They're always buying a new quarterback and a new player and a shiny object that you talk about. But what's going on down there, like on the radio? Like, what do you guys talk about every day if it's not? And I know the NBA's huge business for you guys, but there used to be a lot of clubs in the bag that don't exist anymore in South Florida. At least not for now, right?
It's the worst in the last, I think I've been in radio even since an intern since 0102.
So it's 2 decades.
This is the worst time it's been in sports. This is the worst because of the fact that at least a couple of years back, when the Dolphins or the Hurricane football team or the Marlins or even the Florida Panthers were bad, the Heat had LeBron. So you had something where you were the champion in one sport, or you were very close to being it every year and there. Since 2001, I think it's actually, let me go back a year before that. Since 2000, the Dolphins have been to the playoffs, I believe 3 times, and have won 1 game. 1 playoff win. This is from a team that owned this city for decades. The 72 Dolphins, of course, the undefeated team, even the Killer Bees in the early 80s going into Dan Marino. They owned this city. Football was king. This is before any other sport was down here. Even when the other sports started, football was still king. Now, the Dolphins are the Marlins right now. And the Marlins, we all know what happened with the Marlins. Listen, I don't need to tell an Oriole fan about stinky baseball and stinky ownership and trying to rebuild and retool a team from the ground up, because that's what Derek Jeter's doing down here. But it's unheard of with the Dolphins team to go this big into a rebuild, like a remolding of a franchise. But it's scary because this might be the only thing that will work. No, the Band-Aids, the patch-up jobs haven't worked for this team forever, and this might be it. And this is going to stink for Dolphin fans this year for one reason. Before these trades were made, this was like a 4-win team. And I don't think that, the trades that were made are going to knock off a couple wins. But to be honest, I don't think they're going to win more than 2 games this year. I don't think that they're going to be better than 2-14. And if you're a Dolphins fan, you better hope that 2-14 get to the number 1 pick overall, because if it doesn't, you're going to have to use some of those assets to get up to number 1 if 2 is your guy. Like, it's a scary situation for the Dolphins, the franchise, and the fans right now with this Dolphins team.
And then there's the price of coming back, right? Like when you don't go for years, that's where we are with baseball. We're like, they'll come back and we win. Dude, I've seen your prices. It's $22 to sit in the upper deck. You're trying to give me a bobblehead or a nutcracker I don't want. And, that it's going to sit in a box somewhere or somebody's going to buy it for $5 on the internet. And that person doesn't exist anymore because every bobblehead collector finds, all 32,000 of them find their way down to get their bobbleheads. Then there's not even a secondary market on it. And then it just becomes literally junk that sits on your desk. Where is the thought process in your marketplace? Because I know where we are here with the Nationals and Masson and the Orioles, that the Orioles are going to be for sale. Someone's going to have to buy them. The crack in the door that the franchise isn't there forever. I don't know if the Marlins left and you went to Cuba, anybody notice in your marketplace, and where Jeter is in coming into that, but how wretched the Marlins money, how stinky that was, that everybody smelled the con in your marketplace. And that's probably the hardest place to be because there is no purity in my hometown, my team. The Dolphins are never going to have that to sell, local pride. I mean, Baltimore's still kitschy enough that maybe the Orioles could have that catch on. I often wonder, the Marlins will never have, we're your neighborhood team. They're never going to have that to sell.
No, they won't. They really won't. Even with doing it the way they're doing it now by bringing up young guys and hoping that the young fans catch on with the young guys. I've seen kind of not this, book before or this movie before because this is a different kind of movie. But I've seen the Marlins win 2 World Series since I've been down here living and since the Marlins have been in existence. I've seen 2 World Series championships. There's a lot of teams that will never see 2, with their franchise forever. But I also saw the year after both 2, this team get dismantled and sold off like they were meat in a deli. Like they were going on sale, and instead of $9.99 a pound, you can get them for $7.99 a pound. Like I've seen it, and not just once, twice, and now Project Wolverine, which Derek Jeter, it leaked out before he got down here what the plan was. The plan was to get rid of anyone making money, trade for prospects, and cross your fingers and hope that we got the right prospects. You've seen it in baseball. Anyone who knows baseball knows you can't depend on, listen, you draft Mike Trout in the first round with the number 1 or number 25 pick, whatever he was, you probably got a good player there. What the Marlins have done the last 15 years drafting is not great. They had a couple, shiny objects, as I like to call it. Listen, Yelich was one of those guys. You got rid of him. He's going to be probably a 2-time MVP now. And you got rid of John Carlos Stanton, and you got rid of a bunch of players that were kind of the faces down here of the franchise. But the problem also was with all that, with all those guys down here, you still weren't winning. I think what really cursed this team, and it stinks because it was a tragedy down here, yet some people don't call it a tragedy, was Jose Fernandez, who was the shiny object down here for the Marlins. Their number 1 ace pitcher passed away. He died in a boating accident, and it happened overnight. It was like the most shocking news that anyone could ever hear because this was a guy who, look at the pitchers, the ace pitchers around the league right now, making $30-40 million a year. This was the next guy to do that. And you could build with him. Once he died, the new ownership came in. It was over. This franchise literally went from the bottom up, and it's going to take so long to get back. The problem is that if you don't have a generation of kids that are following your team and your franchise.
Do kids still play baseball down there? I ask because you have weather, right? I'm going to get off the plane. It's going to be 90 degrees.
Right.
We have lacrosse here. Where are you from originally, Zach?
Down here, Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, my whole life.
Yeah, you said, the whole notion that, there's another thing. I would think futsal, anything using your feet, soccer, all of that has always existed there to be a basketball, to be a distraction.
Right.
But lacrosse has been that thing here that's really eaten at baseball and the youth of baseball in our market.
Yeah, I would think that baseball's been big down here since I've been a kid, and even before that, it's always been big. Football has been huge in Dade County, Miami, forever. You could look around the NFL in the last 30 or 40 years, and you could see all the kids that came from, Hall of Famers that came from, Dade County or Broward County. It's always been big. Obviously, the winter sport's not big down here, but you could play baseball all year round. You can play football all year round. You can play outdoor basketball all year round. We do have weather for that. I also think with all that said, that with all the teams down here, even with winning 2 out of 4 NBA championships a couple years back when LeBron was here, even after winning World Series with the Marlins, if the Dolphins somehow can win a Super Bowl, they would shut down South Florida from West Palm Beach to Key West for probably 2 or 3 days, cancel all work like there was a hurricane down here, and they would have the biggest parade we've ever seen in existence of South Florida. Yet we're so far away from that. It's something nice, and it's a shiny object, but it is so far away I can't even drive to get that shiny object right now.
I'll find myself at the shiny object of Tom Jenkins Barbecue on Route 1. I'm going to find myself a little bit of Cuban food while I'm down there. I'm going to find a little piece of sand on Saturday, and I'm going to go watch, hopefully what's a JV game on Sunday. I mean, I better not be getting on the plane Sunday night, and one of the two you speak of would be some miracle that takes place with Ryan Fitzpatrick, right?
Let me tell you something. As much as it would be fun to see a couple wins from this team, I think there are more people now saying, let's just get this season over with. Let's get to next offseason. Let's win 1 or 2 games. Let's win 0 games. I've been through a 1-15 season with this team covering it, and listen, the one win, of course, I'm speaking to the right guy on the other side of the table, on the other side of this phone line right now. It was against Baltimore when Cleo Lemon threw it to Greg Camarillo, and we got into the end zone and won the game. But it's a disaster. Like, people who live in football cities, 8-8 stinks, 7-9 stinks, 6-10 stinks, 5-11 gets you a decent pick, 4-12, 3-2, you got it. 1 or 0 wins. The only people that we could really ask about that kind of stuff is Cleveland and Detroit, and see how those cities were those 2 years, and then Miami with that 1-15 year. It was a nightmare. It was disaster radio. It was disaster football talk for 8 months. It was so bad. And what you got out of that 1-15 was Jake Long and not Matt Ryan. So think about that, too. That could have been a huge change in the franchise if Bill Parcells didn't go with the safe left tackle out of Michigan, but one with the guy that Mike Mayock came down here on the radio 15 times and said, this is the guy. If you need a franchise quarterback, go with Matt Ryan. He's the only guy I like right now. And look what happened. We took Jake Long, and we took Ronnie Brown with the number 2 overall pick after Alex Smith was picked number 1 and Aaron Rodgers was picked 27 or 28. We passed on Drew Brees twice, once in the draft and once when Nick Saban took Dante Culpepper over him because of his shoulder issue versus a knee.
Yeah, well, the Drew Brees thing's very real. That's the one, and the Matt Ryan thing. But we got Joe Flacco in that draft. We did okay.
No, listen. I wish we had Joe Flacco for all those years. Like whatever Baltimore fans want to talk about Joe Flacco and whatever it is at the end there. We would have died for a guy like Joe Flacco down here because we had nobody. Like, there's been no one here at the quarterback position for 20 years. Actually, I take that back. When Brett Favre came out of retirement and went to the Jets and they cut Chad Pennington, we got Chad Pennington. That was the best quarterback we've had since Marino. Marino retired in 2001.
I won't bring up all the Ray Lucases and everything else that sat between.
There's too many guys. How much time you got on your show? We could bring up all 18 guys since then, but it's going to take about 3 hours to get through them.
Jay Fiedler?
Jay Fiedler was here. He was, yeah. If I say that Chad Pennington was the next best guy, Fiedler was the one after that. Yes.
I'm looking forward to the beach. I'm looking forward to seeing you, and I'll be spending a week with you in early February. Who you got in the Super Bowl, Zach?
Super Bowl this year. It's you know what? It's funny I say this because I've been saying it for a couple months. I like the Chargers and the Rams. I like an all-LA Super Bowl here in Miami.
Boy, Roger Goodell would love that, wouldn't he?
Right? I mean, unbelievable. It's just so weird how those are my trendy picks. I loved Indy for a second when Andy Luck was still kind of there. I thought they could be a sexy pick. Who knows with all the young guys, but Jacoby Brissett's not going to do it. But I just feel like it's going to be an all-LA Super Bowl in South Florida. I don't know why I think that.
And no one will come.
Right, that's it.
Take care of yourself, Zach.
Hard Rock Stadium.
We'll see you this weekend, man. It's always good to get down to South Florida. I hope everybody's doing okay after the storm down there,
Nestor, man. Good timing for you to come down here with hopefully the storm being passed and hopefully some nice weather coming in here because for the last 5 days it's been rough waiting for a storm that really has never showed up.
Yeah, well, it's going to show up somewhere, so,
No, it is. The only reason I say that is because I'm happy about South Florida, but I'm watching this thing, touch our coast and then head north, and then the only people I think about at that point are all the people in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and even past that, because if it does get where that is, it's going to be nasty.
It's a way of life in South Florida to have an evacuation route. I don't know that everybody around. It's like being in San Francisco where my friend Julio has all those tequila bottles and, has literally a boxing ring built around them because bottles shake. And so, it's just a different way of life, So, hey, I live in Baltimore. We're trying to make it better, Zach. What can I say? We're all trying to get better.
Listen, you're doing a good job, Nestor, as always.
Appreciate you, my brother. Zach Krantz, whose wife is a miracle like my wife's a miracle, and now has a miracle child and children, and hoping for a miracle with the Marlins, as well as the Dolphins. Would be a miracle this week if the Ravens don't win. Please, no more miracles in South Florida. Nasty at WNST.net finds me, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube, WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.